Hello, and welcome back to the History of series. It's been a while since we've done the history of a species that isn't just the Time Lords, so I thought why not jump back in with the Martians, better known by their universal title of Ice Warriors, something that they later adopted themselves. To get this out of the way, the name Ice Warriors is something that seems to have been retconned in the post-Time War universe. The Martians of the Red Planet adopted that title after being called it by various others in the universe, primarily humanoids. But with that done, let's jump right into it. The original Saurian evolutionaries, later known as Ice Warriors, were created by the Gandorans as a slave warrior race via forced evolution of the non-sentient turtle-like Saurians. While the original batch of Ice Warriors used by Gandoran dictator Zada to slaughter her own people were killed, the Doctor, knowing that they would once rule the planet, speculated that the Quendril either had more of them created at a later point, or that they naturally evolved from the Saurians. Accounts differ as to the downfall of the Ice Warriors, with some mentioned being at their peak and active thousands of years before the Common Era, and others claiming their atmosphere to have been destroyed centuries before the 21st century, or even millions of years before that. At some point, a group of Ice Warriors, led by Lord Arakssor, were convicted for warmongering. Their sentence was life imprisonment in Antarctica. An Ice Warrior attacked the prison in an attempt to escape. However, this flooded the prison, trapping everyone beneath the ice in suspended animation. Looking at the body of the Seventh Doctor, who was also trapped beneath the ice, Genevieve Marcour estimated this time as millions of years before 2012. The Ice Warriors were once visited by the godlike Osirans, who cruelly and callously used them as little more than labourers on their construction projects. Millions of years BCE, the Martians were a migratory species. They evolved to the point that all their waste products were recycled. The battle between the two Osirans, Sutekh and Horus, also affected the Martians by being one of the reasons Mars was left in a state of temporal flux. Circa 59,000 BCE, the Ice Warriors were part of the empire of the Gubbage cones, or fungoids. At some point in the past, the Ice Warrior precursors built a gigantic generation ship that later became known as Phobos and colonized Mars. Human astronomers mistook the ship for a natural moon of Mars. The Martian Industrial Revolution took place at the same time as the Phyllocene era on Earth. Some exploration of other planets was attempted. One warrior, known as Varga, went to Earth, but his ship was trapped in a glacier for thousands of years. Sometime after this, their civilization went into decline as Mars became more inhospitable. As Mars became colder, the Ice Warriors adopted what the 11th Doctor called survival armour to survive in the freezing cold temperatures. Circa 5000 BCE, the Ice Warriors realised that complete devotion to the concepts of war would destroy their race in the same manner as the Osirans. Using their legends and race memories, they created a peaceful religion that taught pacifism and compassion. This became the doctrine of the Order of Oras. Circa 3000 BCE, by Professor Grishenko's reckoning, the Ice Warriors had a mighty empire and a fleet. The fleet was called the Nyxtasis and commanded by Grand Marshal Skaldak. In unknown circumstances, Skaldak was trapped under the ice of the North Pole on Earth and frozen for thousands of years. Roughly around the same time, the Ice Warrior hive, led by Queen Iraxxa, entered what would become a 5,000-year hibernation. At some point, the Martian civilization was made of peaceful people who were not warriors, but artisans who hunted for food and never experienced war. In this era, their world was a thriving planet, with a native sentient species lasting 12,000 years. Though they preferred the cold, one settlement was built on the equator, but the construction of its shell-shaped buildings allowed for a cooler environment and waterways kept the populace fulfilled. Their sense of honour stretched back from this time as their civilization was built on a gift-based economy, in which things were given freely and receivers gave something back in return. It was a world of craftsmen, builders, and farmers, which built wondrous pyramids on their home planet. During this early period, Martian cities were noted as being much like those on Earth. Food waste and plant matter was left on the streets. However, a visit by the Fifth Doctor and his companion Amy led to the fall of the race. The two time travelers were looking for a decaying segment of the key to time, which had taken the form of a pyramid's capstone. The segment had begun its decay, causing earthquakes. The Doctor and Amy, along with Zara and Harmonious 14 Zinc, who were also looking for the segments, reached the top of the pyramid. Zara, who was a sentient tracer, activated the segment, leaving with Zinc's time ring. This led to the formation of a gravity well, which sent earthquakes and hurricanes across the planet for 3 decades. 3 disasters devastated the Martian civilization. Some managed to get off-world, but most remained on Mars, where they fought amongst themselves for food and shelter. After 30 years, the energies from the segment of the key to time had been spent, and the ground had settled. What remained of their race emerged onto their world, where they planned to rebuild, even if it took them 1,000 years. Despite this honourable goal, the Ice Lord Isdal had been observing the sky. His studies determined that their atmosphere was no longer capable of keeping out radiation from outer space, which would eventually wipe them out. He told the government that their turmoil was not over, and with the evidence of sickening children, he declared that their world was no longer sustainable. While he was ignored by his people, Isdal made the ultimate sacrifice. To prove himself right, he elected to step outside and face the Red Dawn, knowing that he would die. His death led his people coming to the same conclusion, uniting them together and slowly becoming a conqueror race that took what they wanted from others. A group of ice warriors remained in suspended animation on Mars to protect Isdal's tomb, risking never being woken up. Isdal's guardians lay inside their tombs, waiting for a life form with enough honourable intentions to make it past the biometric locks inside the tomb, having much to offer the Ice Warriors as they would to any Earth life forms that would discover the tomb. Another group of Ice Warriors remained hidden in a hive as sleeping guardians for the Ice Queen Iraxxa, who was also slumbering in suspended animation. During the 9th century, the Ice Warriors were attacked by a native Martian parasite they called the Flood. Many Ice Warriors died attempting to sterilize the planet. Ultimately, they discovered that the Flood could only be defeated by freezing it in a glacier. However, while they were lowering the Flood into the Guzes crater, an Ice Warrior was infected and fled to Earth, followed by a force of warriors attempting to stop its spread. They encountered the 12th Doctor with the Hemovores and the original Wolves of Fenric. After learning that Fenric intended to replace the Hemovores with the Flood, a Hemovore sacrificed itself to cause a volcanic eruption, destroying the Flood strain on Earth as the remaining Ice Warriors departed for Mars after creating a distraction for the Doctor. After the abandonment of Mars, 11 world ships were sent out to find a new homeland. However, communication between High Marshal Kryss and the world ship he was captain of was severed from the rest of the fleet, thanks to a great cosmic storm known as the Great Desolatrix, also known for the destruction of entire patches of N-space. With his world ship damaged from a crash, Kryss fought on the bridge, claiming that it was his new Mars, slaying anyone who tried to take it for 7 days. However, he was then captured by the Sycorax, who took him to an asteroid, forcing him to fight in the cage. Eventually, the 4th Doctor and Leela arrived, searching for the Great Desolatrix. They were captured by the Sycorax, and Leela was forced to fight Kryss in the cage. The Ice Warrior tried to kill Leela in rage, but Leela managed to calm him down. He then asked for her to kill him, which she refused. Through the speakers surrounding the cage, several of the Ice Warrior captains asked for immediate help from the storm. After the Ice Warriors destroyed parts of the asteroid, Kryss was rescued. According to the 12th Doctor, Mars's atmosphere had all but evaporated, and the surface was lifeless before 1881. He told Queen Iraxxa that her people could not survive without help. The Ice Warrior, known as Friday, agreed with the Doctor. After a minor skirmish between British troops Friday had led to the planet, Iraxxa and her warriors ultimately departed with a rescue fleet sent by Alpha Centauri, which the Doctor believed would spark off the Martian Golden Age. At some point prior to his travels to ancient Mars, the 5th Doctor was surprised that there were Ice Warriors still around by the 21st century. He assumed they had all left Mars after its atmosphere thinned centuries before the 21st, while Lord Zal said the Ice Warriors had discovered primitive, early life developing on Earth before his people went into suspended animation. The 8th Doctor dated this time as many millions of years before the 23rd century. The 11th Doctor claimed that the Ice Warriors were scattered all across the universe. Following the destruction of the atmosphere, the Ice Warriors fled to Deimos, one of the planet's moons, where they constructed catacombs and placed themselves in suspended animation, in the hope of one day either reclaiming Mars or conquering Earth. A human-made exhibit of Deimos, dramatising the lead-up to Isdal's walk into the dawn, mentioned that Earth was unsuitable to be conquered and inhabited by at this point in history, and that the Ice Warriors had nowhere to evacuate to. It is said that the Ice Warriors would one day awaken from the tombs to become the rightful rulers of the Sol system. Lord Zal, who had placed himself in suspended animation around the same time as those on Deimos, also told the Fifth Doctor that at that point the Earth's environment was unsuitable for them. According to Lord Zal, even without the threat of the dawn, the low temperature and loss of water would mean that an Ice Warrior could only survive for a few days. As Mars died, 1 million Martians remained trapped in suspended animation on board the generation ship that had become the moon Phobos. Similar installations existed in the asteroid belt of the Sol system. At some point after Isdal met the Red Dawn, the tracer Zara asked Isskar, now an elderly Ice Lord, to come to Safe Place so she could assemble the rest of the key to time and perhaps restore Mars. Isskar and a group of his warriors left on a ship in suspended animation. Centuries before 1997, Martian scientists concluded that the possibility of oxygen-breathing life forms was a complete absurdity. There were many attempts by the Martians to revitalize their world, but they lacked the resources to accomplish it. They tried to grow plants in the barren soil, but these were always rotting and dying. In 1609, the Ice Warriors participated in the Armageddon Convention, which convened in Laputa, a floating island in the sky near Venice. In 1903, after receiving a wealth of information from the future, Grigory Rasputin saw the Ice Warriors. In the 1960s, Jack Harkness helped Torchwood 3 defeat an invasion from the Ice Warriors. Torchwood salvaged their sonic cannons once the invaders were defeated. While disorientated, the newly regenerated Fifth Doctor appeared to recall an unrecorded adventure involving the Ice Warriors and UNIT on 1970s Earth during his third incarnation. In 1983, a lone ice warrior by the name of Grand Marshal Skaldak, who had been frozen in ice for over 5,000 years, was brought aboard the Soviet submarine the Firebird. A crew member decided to thaw the ice before they reached Moscow, and so Skaldak was revived. After revealing himself, Skaldak was attacked by the crew and imprisoned, managing to escape by leaving his suit, using it as a distraction and a distress call. Noticing that it appeared to go unanswered, he believed his race to be dead, and so attempted to use the sub's nuclear arsenal to attack humanity, causing the Cold War superpowers to respond with mutually assured destruction. The 11th Doctor and Clara Oswald attempted to talk him into showing mercy, but before he made a decision, Skaldak was rescued by his people, and remotely deactivated the launch procedure. By 1997, Mars was in its dying days, and its people were racked by sterility and disease. The Argyre clan of warriors tried to invade Earth, nominally taking over the United Kingdom with human collaborators to form a mutually beneficial relationship, but actually intending a mass terraforming of the planet. This was thwarted by the 8th Doctor, and the clan was eradicated. However, according to the 12th Doctor, Mars was already lifeless before 1881, and the Ice Warriors could not survive without help. In the early 21st century, a team from the Argosy, funded by Leo Webster, intended to take an Ice Warrior for Paul Webster to create a human clone army augmented by Ice Warrior biology and technology. The team and the 5th Doctor with Perry arrived inside Isdal's tomb, where his guardians awoke from suspended animation. Paul tried kidnapping Sub-Commander Sast in the Argosy, but the ship was shot down. Paul then held the Doctor and his cousin, the human Ice Warrior hybrid Tanya Webster, as hostages, attempting to escape with the Ice Warrior's rocket. In exchange for the survival of the tomb, Lord Zal swapped places with the Doctor. As dawn broke, Zal was killed by the ultraviolet rays from Red Dawn. With Zal no longer in mortal danger, Zast fired a sonic charge at Paul, killing him. Tanya stayed behind, becoming an ambassador for Earth when communication between the two planets opened. In 2008, an invasion was attempted in Sydney, Australia, but was thwarted by UNIT. In the year 2012, an expedition under Lord Bass went to Antarctica to follow an earlier expedition by his grandfather in 1929. His ancestor's mission was a complete failure, with only a single survivor who informed the other that the expedition had fallen prey to intelligent reptile men with superior technology. Seeking to uncover this advanced weaponry for himself, Barset accidentally freed the imprisoned Arakssor and his fellow murderers from the ice. The 7th Doctor activated Geldar's distress call and boosted it to contact a Martian warship from the other side of the galaxy. The warship bombarded the prison from orbit, killing the Ice Warriors inside. In the 2010s, an ice warrior was a resident of the hidden Trap Street in London, which housed lost aliens on Earth. Like the rest of the inhabitants, it appeared cloaked in human form through the use of lurkworms. Another invasion and terraforming was attempted in the mid-21st century, when the Ice Warriors led by Slar invaded the central Tiamat building base on the Moon, which regulated global Tiamat operations. He attempted to use a fungus which would turn the Earth into a more hospitable planet for them. The Second Doctor and his companions stopped him. According to Harold, who had watched a documentary about the Ice Warriors on the History Channel, the Ice Warriors were supposed to have been wiped out following the Tiamat incident. In the 23rd century, the Ice Warrior expert Professor Schooner declared the Ice Warriors extinct for centuries, while Gregson Grenville had learnt in school that they were all melted when the invasion fleet spiraled into the sun. According to Grenville, nobody knew of any Ice Warriors existing after this period until the attack on Deimos moonbase in the 23rd century. Human tourists to the catacombs of Deimos in the 23rd century, such as Margaret, considered the moon the final resting place of the Ice Warriors, and she and Harold expressed shock that the real Ice Warriors could ever exist. One of the Ice Warriors that awoke from the tombs on Deimos considered him and 8 others the last of their race. The 8th Doctor corrected him, mentioning the tombs in the asteroid belt containing Ice Warriors yet to have been awakened. Another account stated that in 2086, invasion was attempted yet again, leading to the Thousand-Day War. By 2088, the humans had won. In 2097, the female pope made a papal visit to Mars in order to anoint the first Martian bishops. This was done to improve relations between Martians and humans. The Daleks made an assassination attempt during this visit. According to one account, by the early 22nd century, the interstitial mass transit system had been established, linking the planetary bodies of the Sol system in a way that allowed humanity to treat Mars as a colony world, marginalizing the remaining survivors of the war and, through the 22nd century, marginalized the Ice Warriors on their own home planet. Later, the Ice Warriors became allies of the humans. The Ice Warriors colonized a new planet and named it New Mars, or Neo-Eres. When a passing Dalek fleet attacked Mars on its way to invade Earth, the Ice Warriors helped Mars colonists create a virus which ate away at Dalek cable insulation, which led to the Dalek defeat. However, according to the 8th Doctor, the Ice Warriors would not establish a new homeworld until the Ice Warriors in the tombs in the asteroid belt awoke a few centuries from the 23rd. The monk showed Tamsin Drew the Ice Warriors having forcibly taken over the planet Halcyon around the 33rd century. The 8th Doctor mentioned that colonies of humans existed on Mars, numbering 300,000 in the 23rd century, according to Temperance Finch, although no Ice Warriors were known to live there. The Doctor said to the monk that without the monk's involvement in awakening them, there shouldn't even be Ice Warriors on Deimos at this point of history. According to one account, during the 22nd century, Ice Warriors came into conflict with the Selachian Empire when a colony refused to sell weapons to the Selachians. The Akorans used their Sunstoker on these colonists to kill them. When the Ice Warriors on Deimos were prematurely awakened by the monk in the 23rd century, he planned for them to alter the atmosphere on Mars with an atmospheric reionizer, which would allow them to wipe out the 300,000 colonists, rather than the population of the planet Halcyon, numbering 20 billion 1,000 years later. These Ice Warriors commanded Tourist Shuttle No. 2 from their tombs to take over the Deimos moonbase. The 600 visitors and staff inside the moonbase were squeezed into a passenger rocket to evacuate. Tamsin Drew and Gregson Glenville had placed a bomb inside and planned to activate the bomb as they headed back to the rocket, while the Doctor and Professor Schooner sabotaged the reionizer. Professor Schooner was killed while buying time for the Doctor, while he and Tamsin leapt aboard the rocket, but Gregson couldn't reach the rocket in time. The rocket took off, killing Gregson and the 2 Ice Warriors. The Doctor considered activating the bomb remotely himself, but backtracked when the rocket received a text message from Lucy Miller, who had been placed there by the monk as part of his plans. When the rocket returned to Deimos thanks to a gravity eddy, Lord Skaldak demanded that they have the Doctor, so that the reionizer could be repaired. When the reionizer began its process, the Doctor, unable to reverse the effects, brought it to a very sudden halt with a very loud bang, by reducing critical feedback in the isolation beam. At the last minute, the Doctor also made the process alter Mars into an Earth-like atmosphere, rather than that of the Mars of long before. With only 5 minutes to escape the catacombs, the surviving Ice Warriors failed to make it when the feedback ignited the atmosphere of the moonbase. Circa the 24th century, a group of ice warriors on the planet Magnus got caught up with the deals of the mentor Sil, who said he would lower the temperature of Magnus to make the world a more comfortable environment for Martians. The Sixth Doctor and Peri put an end to this plan. In the 25th century, the Fourth Doctor combated the plots of the Ares Corporation and awakened the sleeping Martians on the artificial moon of Phobos. The event became known as Resurrection Day. By the 26th century, the Ice Warriors were an isolated species. They had left Mars and, according to one account, were isolated on New Mars. However, the monk showed Tamsin Drew that they couldn't even find a new world to live on until the discovery of Halcyon, around the 33rd century. During this century, an Ice Warrior, Armour, accompanied Absalom Dak and his crew in the Kill Wagon. In the late 26th century, a Martian called Hass became the gardener at the Braxiatel collection. Around the 27th century, 2 delegates of New Mars were in peace talks with Queen Bastravan. After leaving this conference, Carter and his partner set off explosives, inadvertently doing severe damage to the space liner the Empress, instead of wiping out one floor as planned. The Ice Warrior delegate, Asnesh Azar, thinking the explosion was the Queen's doing, set a collision course for Ronos Minor that would kill the remaining dignitaries on board and provoke a war against the Queen. Carter, though having escaped, was discovered to be involved, preventing the hostilities, while a fake distress call Azar sent out attracted the attention of the Ice Warriors. They brought the survivors of the explosion to safety. In the mid-31st century, the Eighth Doctor and Stacy accidentally interrupted Iraxxil's rite of ascension. During the distraction, Iraxxil was kidnapped by Lord Artix in order to stop the ceremony. If Iraxxil was not an adult, he could not inherit the title of High Lord of Balazaris Mons from his father Uzox, which would mean Artix would take over. Though Iraxxil was eventually rescued, the Doctor and Iraxxil were returned to the forces of Darcis Mons to try and rescue Stacy and Sard, and were captured. Despite this, Artix was eventually defeated, and Iraxxil became an adult. In 3049, the 13th Doctor and her companions visited a Martian moon base. Yasmin Khan lost her wallet there. By the late 39th century, the Ice Warriors were members of the Galactic Federation, and had, for the most part, renounced their warlike ways. At some point after their entry into the Federation, the Ice Warriors served as monitors, and were dispatched to Draconia to oversee the crisis developing among the Draconians after the ascendance of Empress Ajit Kwan. It was led by Commander Izpetir, who was empowered to declare martial law in the case civil unrest became too great, and was charged with guarding the adjudicators that were there to negotiate a peaceful settlement. The 10th Doctor arrived with his companion Donna Noble and was mistaken for the adjudicator. An Ice Warrior delegation, led by Lord Islier, was sent to Peladon when it applied to join the Federation. The Third Doctor initially suspected them of being responsible for the plots, undermining the negotiations, but eventually worked with Islier to discover the true culprits. Years after Peladon had entered the Federation, the Martians had entered a civil war on New Mars, and Grand Marshal Raxlier had placed the planet under martial law, cutting off contact with the outside world. The Martian royal family had been executed, apart from Princess Lixgar of New Mars, and she, along with other refugees, had been granted refuge by King Peladon of Peladon. Most of the Martians were kept in refugee camps on Peladon, while Princess Lixgar was held in the chamber of the prisoner of Peladon until Lord Islier could safely take her to Federation headquarters on Io. Late in King Peladon's reign, Lord Ismari was sent to Peladon to carry out a surprise inspection from the Federation. Ixmari located the king as he'd left the citadel in search of an alleged prophet Skarn, and was fatally wounded by one of Skarn's disciples. During the Galactic Federation's war with Galaxy 5, a breakaway group of Ice Warriors led by Lord Arakssor worked for the enemy and embraced their old martial ways. Working with Eckersley, they went to Peladon under the guise of peacekeepers during a dispute with the miners which was endangering the Federation's supply of trisilicate, intending to seize the supply for Galaxy 5. Their scheme was exposed and foiled by the Third Doctor and Sarah Jane Smith. A century after the Doctor's previous visit to Peladon, the Martians were again members of the Federation. By this point, Martian royalty were referred to as princes and princesses of Mars rather than New Mars. Ambassador Silas aided the Eighth Doctor in fomenting a revolution on Peladon to end the reign of Chancellor Baroque. In 4010, a group of Martians were on Cressida to watch a rare chemical reaction in the atmosphere of Uranus. Circa 5000, during an ice age on Earth, Varga was finally revived after being discovered by scientists from Britannicus base. Taking Victoria Waterfield hostage, he stole equipment from the base to revive the rest of his crew, and planned to seize fuel from the base's reactor to refuel their spaceship and escape Earth, attacking anyone who came near their ship and threatening the base with a sonic cannon. The Second Doctor came to their ship, and the Ice Warriors threatened Victoria to get the information they needed about the base, then invaded the facility. The Doctor modified their sonic cannon to incapacitate them, forcing them to retreat back to their ship, and the scientists then activated their ionizer, which destroyed them. At a point in time after the destruction of Earth, the Tansor clan of the Ice Warriors, led by Ixilda, attempted to alter the technology that humans were using to terraform Hereafter to make the planet more like Mars. After they were stopped by the 11th Doctor, the Ice Warriors settled on Atrux 881. On the planet Yama 10, the Ice Warriors were mining the hostile world of Trisilicate when their position was attacked by the Cybermen, who wanted that world as part of their empire. Taking the battle to the polar ice caps, which were a more suitable condition for the Martians to fight in, the battle raged between the two sides. This ice melted, drowning the Cybermen and entombing the Ice Warriors in the ice. A group of Ice Warriors, led by Arakssor, sabotaged the weather controls of the luxury planet A-Lux, turning it into a snowy and barren land. They were defeated by the 7th Doctor and Frobisher. The Ice Warriors were part of the Alliance of Races, which was formed by Rassilon to defeat the Hyperions. After the Hyperions were defeated, the Alliance then went on to purge the universe of other threats to universal harmony, one of those being Count Diff of the Cybok Imperium. They were also part of the Supremos Alliance in the war against Morbius. A group of Ice Warriors were among the aliens stuck on Denosis when it was transported to the Time Vortex by the Vortexians. They would remain trapped for over 20 years until the Vortexians were expelled by the 2nd Doctor. Whilst at a party, the 8th Doctor saw an Ice Lord. The Ice Warriors had somewhat of a presence on Coralie. By a time centuries before the 38th century, some Ice Lords had joined Faction Paradox. Faction agents on New Mars informed the Elders of the 11th Day Empire of I.M. Foreman's travelling show. At some point, an Ice Warrior named Arakssor, as well as another Ice Warrior, were held as slaves aboard a slaver ship circling the Franco Bazaar. They were freed by the 2nd Doctor and led an uprising against their masters. When the slavers departed, the slaves aboard used the ship to return everyone home that wanted to be, and everyone else to become a new crew that would find their destiny among the stars. An Ice Warrior was one of the judges of the 309th Intergalactic Song Contest. 16,000 years after the fall of Mars, the Ice Lord Oscar's ship, guided and used by Zara, arrived on safe place to find a segment to the Key to Time, and in doing so began fighting the Valdigians at a castle there. After Isskar was freed from being trapped in the segment, he arrested the 5th Doctor and Amy to take them to tribunal. Isskar confiscated Amy's segments and sent the TARDIS overboard, while the ship was in hyperspace in the event of the Doctor and Amy's escape. Zara, being unable to detect Amy's segments, travelled back in time with the Time Ring, having wrecked the controls of the ship. Their ship was on a collision course with the red giant Laboon. The Ice Warriors escaped in pods, but the Doctor and Amy were forced to stay behind. An Ice Warrior was exhibited in the Space Museum when the Vashta Narada invaded. At a point in time prior to their participation in the Galactic Federation, the Ice Warriors settled on the planet Bellona. Humans colonized a neighboring planet known as Enyo, eventually leading to a war of control over the system. The 10th Doctor recalled this as one of the many wars between the two species. The humans won by deploying a weapon which devastated Bellona, forcing the Ice Warriors to retreat to the polar ice caps. A group of warriors led by Lord Haskor went into hibernation in the ice, hoping to one day get their vengeance. The humans eventually felt remorse for their actions and allowed refugees from Bellona to settle on Enyo. 500 years later, the ice-containing Haskor's warriors was scooped up by Coldstar Incorporated and placed aboard the Coldstar station in orbit over Enyo. A pirate raid on the station led to Haskor and his warriors awakening and attempting to claim vengeance first by piloting Coldstar towards Enyo and then by hijacking the pirate ship to crash into the planet's capital. They were foiled by the 10th Doctor, Rose and the pirates. Haskor eventually abandoned his efforts after Lorna told him about the Ice Warriors living on Enyo. Ice Warriors were present during the Siege of Trenzalore. 3 Ice Warriors, Lords Skaldak, Esper, and Zontan, snuck past the Papal mainframe's weapon detectors by landing on the planet with no weapons, nor any technology or communications inside their armour, inside capsules of ice. They had also brought along inert pieces of a sonic cannon to construct on the planet, so they could cause an avalanche to kill the 11th Doctor and the residents of Christmas, making it appear as if it were an accident with his sonic screwdriver or a natural event. As part of this plan, Zontan sabotaged Christmas's snow farm to pile up snow on top of the nearby ridge. The Doctor tricked the Ice Warriors into revealing the frequency of the cannon, and used his sonic to amplify the cannon, causing it to explode, destroying the warriors and instantly vaporizing the ridge that they were on. The Ice Warriors either retreated or died in the fighting, as by the end only the Daleks remained on Trenzalore against the Doctor. The Ice Warrior hives were established as a colony on Mars. There were Ice Warriors in the Death Zone, when several incarnations of Iris Wildtime were sent there by Ohika. Unbeknownst to the 11th Doctor, an Ice Warrior was present on Tianamat. In an alternative timeline created by the Black Guardian, where the First Doctor never left Gallifrey and instead became Lord President, the Ice Warriors were one of many aliens that invaded Earth, and fought over the planet with other races against the Silurians and the Sea Devils. This timeline was destroyed when the 7th Doctor retrieved the key to time. In an alternate timeline of the 27th century, created by Doggles' History Machine, Hass's brother Set was in negotiations with Irving Braxiatel over the possession of certain Martian artifacts, including carved obsidian from Phobos. Set eventually sent a ship full of clades, a type of autonomous battlefield weapon, to the Braxiatel collection, killing many civilians. In Pete's world, what were described as big green monsters from Mars attempted to take over the Arctic, but were fought off by UNIT. And that is the story of the Ice Warriors, one that I think mirrors the Silurians quite closely. Both species were forced into hibernation by some natural event that changed the course of their history forever, but the Ice Warriors are even more muddled than the Silurians, with many being in hibernation all across the universe instead of just on their home planet, scattered to the winds. But anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like and subscribing down below, as it really helps out the channel. But, as always, thanks for watching.